So welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for one of our favorite shows. It's time for This Week with Wendy, the only show where you'll find real talk about the SoCal state of mind, the real state of mind here in Southern California, with our real host, Wendy Ross, who after decades of really working at real estate brokerages in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, decided maybe it's time to do something really different. So if I haven't hit that real analogy enough today here, let's point out that she did that. She created something that really hadn't existed, a bespoke service, a way to help people at all price levels. And through that, she built a data-driven decision company that is all about looking at the data. So she's got a bunch of data divas that keeps coming through our doors here, talking about what's really happening, and we're going to try and figure that out again today here with the Dean of Data.
Look at you.
The Dean of Data, Dean Wendy here.
Nice. How appropriate being here at UCI.
Yeah,
right? At the Cove.
Suddenly occurred to me. Yeah, we're at an institution, higher learning, and you're helping us learn here.
You know, and of all the weeks, this is the week I thought you would call me a diva since I was in the hot pink suit. But no.
That was too obvious. The glittery hot pink suit here.
Someone's got to do it.
I just have to adjust the lens on our camera a little bit. That's okay. Other than that.
I'm just going to be like this sparkly glow, like the original Wizard of Oz. Glenn the Good Witch came in. She was just a ball of sparkles.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know, we got to keep it light because I try to dig into data that you're not going to hear anywhere else, and also just market industry analysis. And I surround myself with amazing people who are not only brilliant, but just a delight to talk to, like Mahyar. Mahyar Ghassemian is one of my favorite attorneys. And before we were on air, we were talking about how attorneys and favorite don't always go together. But no, Mahyar is founding attorney of Ghassemian Law Group. And she was one of my first guests when I first started. So, but aside from that, just a dear friend, and talk about an industry partner. I couldn't ask for anyone greater. Her firm focuses on construction and business law. They're known for providing tough representation when clients do get sued, but also helping them prevent lawsuits through proper planning. And she was a featured speaker recently when she discussed the topic of home improvement contracts, and my mind was blown. So I invited her to please come back and talk about that today. So Mahyar, thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
You are always a wealth of information. I mean, you probably forget more than a lot of attorneys ever know. How do you keep it all straight?
I don't know. That's a good question.
When you ponder the milieu that's in your head.
Yeah, you'd be surprised what's up there.
I would not. I would not be surprised. Sometimes we'll have to have too much wine and talk about it. But for now, let's just put that on pause for a moment. I'm going to talk about what This Week with Wendy is about, and let's talk about this week in real estate before we dive into all things Mahyar. So as of this weekend, we've had 3,668 active listings on the market. Just under 1,000 are currently in escrow, and that's down a tick, about 12% from last week. So we're trending downward, which is indicative of a cooling winter market, so not terribly unusual. What is unfortunate is that so far, month to date, we've only sold 1,253 homes. That's less than half what we would normally have sold at this period of time, even though we do have 33% fewer listings than we normally would by this time. So it's just continuing the same COVID trend of less. Median price for all those armchair quarterbacks out there who are screaming doom and gloom, median price actually ticked up $10,000 week over week. So it went from $920 back up to $930. By the end of the month, it could be back at $950 again. It really is just anyone's call. Let's wait and see what the last week truly brings us. But at this sluggish rate of sales, it would take us just over 3.5 months to sell all the active inventory, which again is about twice as slow as we would normally see this time of year. So those interest rate increases really did just put the brakes on the market. People have come off the market and they're waiting for things to change, and sadly they're not. So the list price to sold price ratio held strong at 99%. So those people out there writing offers 10% below list, stop it, because it's not working. You can do it, but your broker will hate you, and you're probably not my client. All right, so that's really kind of all we have. Let's wait and see what the end of October brings. The market is frozen and stable. And that's it. It's kind of boring. So let's not be bored. Let's talk about all things construction, Mahyar.
And that is so exciting.
If you do it right? I'd be out there in the morning with my cup of coffee watching the cute contractors come and go. But that's just me. Oh, my goodness. So tell us about for those who haven't met you or heard you before, tell us about your background, your experience, and what brought you into construction law.
Okay, so my background is physics, actually. I have a master's degree in physics, and something came over me, and I went to law school, and I finished, and then I interviewed with a firm where they represented some of the largest contractors in the U.S., some of the
Wow.
largest construction companies. We're talking Turner, Whiting Turner. These are contracting companies that build airports and stadiums and what have you. And they had a lot of defect cases, meaning things that had gone wrong in the actual construction. And they wanted someone who had a technical background, who'd be comfortable with numbers and whose eyes wouldn't glaze looking at plans.
I
So-
can't believe I keep forgetting this. You go from physics, which is daunting enough, to law, and then you find a way to blend the two together.
Yes, and it worked out well because I enjoyed working with experts. These types of cases are extremely reliant on scientific experts and engineers, and that's kind of my background. So I talk the talk with them. I was able to put a team of experts together and run the cases, and I enjoyed them. And then what happened was sort of broaden the practice, no longer just defects. We do basically soup to nuts, whatever is construction related. So a lot of construction, commercial contracts, and a lot of now residential as well. I just have to make one distinction between real estate law and construction law. Real estate law involves rights to real estate. For instance, zoning issues, neighbor to neighbor, boundary issues, things that involve rights to having real estate. Whereas construction law actually deals with the building of things.
I see.
So it could be a building, it could be a home, it could be a freeway or a bridge, doesn't matter. It's the actual physical building of things and all issues that involve that.
I see.
And so it could be defects or it could be contracts, which has been the majority of our cases in the last few years. Payment issues, one party doesn't pay the other one, and things escalate. And so we do a lot of public contract issues, say contracts with the school districts, with the University of California, where we're sitting, with Caltrans, those types of stuff. But then in addition to that, a lot of private stuff. And what we have been doing a lot of the past few years because of COVID is home improvement contracts and issues.
That makes sense. And I'm glad that you touched on COVID because I wanted to ask you. I thought that I'd heard some rumblings about larger contractors were having challenges either getting materials or facing lawsuits because things weren't being delivered on time due to circumstances beyond their control.
Yes.
You saw a lot of that as well?
Yes, there's some issues there. There's one issue is the rising cost of materials. Contractors put a bid in and then they have to get the materials. They're looking at it from the time frame they put it in. COVID comes in and delays happen and prices go up, and now they're bound to say do a job for $2 million and the cost is going to be $2.5 million. And
Wow.
so that's one issue. Delay is another issue. There is a major kink in the supply chain
Still?
Some materials have to come from overseas, and as you see along our coast, less these days, but freighters are just lining up trying to get their shipments out. So that's another issue. Another one is that just the backing up of various permits and stuff that deal with government. So construction was early on declared to be an essential industry, and so construction contractors continued to work.
Right.
And that was because of the efforts of a lot of construction organizations in California.
But yeah, I also heard from friends of mine who have smaller construction companies that they were plagued by the challenges COVID put on them, that if one person on the team became ill with COVID, then they had to send multiple people home, but they still had to do jobs. They had to hire, temporary workers, and just the labor costs were enormous surrounding their obligations during COVID. And I hope that's calmed down a bit.
That's true. It has calmed down a bit, but what I was alluding to with the government issues is that at the same time that construction contracts were happening and construction
Governments were shutting
people
down.
were busy, government was
I know.
shutting
You couldn't
down.
get a permit.
You couldn't get a permit. You couldn't get the required, inspections. And so all of this together has a lot of issues that have been created.
Yeah, we saw a couple of impacts of that in residential, but not because once in a while in certain communities like Lake Forest or Ladera, in certain communities you have to have the community city person come and inspect the property before you can close the sale. So we had some delays because of that, but that was fairly early on.
And if I'm a positive person, so I have to talk about the positive too.
Yes.
What happened, however, was especially in California because of the gas tax that is allocated to help refurbish our infrastructure, which was very old, 70, 80 years old.
Yes.
Because of that, and also all the funding from the federal government for infrastructure projects, construction kept on working. Projects come and people are working. Now, most people don't realize how foundational it is. Construction touches on so many different industries, and for construction to be healthy and happening, that creates a lot of jobs for people. It creates jobs for material people, for people who are in the government, and on and on and on. So it actually helps to the health of our economy in California.
And thank goodness that we had that. I mean, I'm disappointed we're not building more houses, but the infrastructure, to your point, is something that we've been screaming about for decades. So thank goodness that's being done. And where I live in Santa Ana, it seems like it's constant because we were in such dire need. But it's lovely to see that this is happening. But all of that said, that's such a great bird's eye view. What we're going to talk about today in a little bit more granular detail is the home improvement contract, because again, to your point, during COVID, people were really feathering in the nest something awful. They're like, I need another room. I need an ADU. I need to, add, build, whatever. So can you talk to us about what people do and don't know about these home improvement contracts? There's a lot of mystery.
Wow, where to start?
I know, right?
Okay, so as you said, people were trying to make their homes more livable. So, excuse me. So a lot of them started doing remodeling or adding, etc. What the majority of people, and even a lot of contractors in the home improvement space, do not know is that home improvement contracts are extremely regulated in the state of California. So the legislators have actually put in the language that needs to be there. We add extra protections, but they have put language that needs to be there. And it's extremely specific
I couldn't believe when you were sharing that, like certain font sizes and everything.
It's which language should be where and what is the font size, and this has to be bold and that has to be whatever. And probably about 95% of contracts we see are non-compliant.
Wow.
So that causes a big problem for the contractor because they're in violation of the law and they could get into trouble with the contractor's licensing board. For the homeowner, because now the protections are not there. So we see a homeowner who sees basically a proposal, an estimate of costs, signs down there. Well, what's missing are protections such as attorney's fees if something happens, and for someone who actually wins a lawsuit, such as transfer of risks, such as insurance requirements. Probably 1 in 100 come and tell us that they actually have the insurance policy, or they have a certificate of insurance from the contractor.
Wow.
What people don't realize is that when a contractor is bonded, that's not the same as insured. There's a minimum bond of $15,000 that's required by the state
What's that
of
gonna cover?
California.
Nothing.
In Orange County, your bathroom is going to be, remodeling is going to be more than that.
Right.
So in that, it can get divided between different projects
Good grief.
depending on who comes first.
Right.
Right? So insurance is what provides the protection for both the contractor and the homeowner.
And you were speaking to that, saying that the homeowner needs to be named as additionally insured for the duration of their project.
Correct.
And I would bet that's less than 1% of the people that actually get that done.
That's true.
Incredible.
And what they don't realize is that if the contractor doesn't have insurance, they probably have no chance of recovering against the contractor.
What exposure that could be.
That's, or they have to spend literally tens of thousands of dollars to go take a lawsuit to the end, and then maybe go after the contractor's home or other stuff.
And who wants that?
No, nobody wants that. So there are some protections that can be put in place early on to help minimize the cost of a lawsuit or the chance for a lawsuit.
Okay, so help me understand this. Like, I'm a 5-year-old. So walk me through, okay, I'm going to be doing something to my house. What is the first thing that triggers the requirement to have this kind of contract with this kind of language? Like, at what point does this become absolutely necessary?
Okay. Any contracts over $500.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm not kidding. They have to be in writing in California and have to comply. Now, when we say home improvement contract, in California, if you buy an old house and you bring it down to the stud, so you're basically building a new home.
Right.
But a lot of times people keep one stud to preserve the tax basis. That is considered a home improvement contract.
Wow, and that could
Home
be $1 million.
improvement, and it could be. I've dealt with home improvement contracts that are $1.5 million, $2 million. This is Orange County.
That's true. I know. Okay, so let's say, because my house needs to be painted. Let's say I just want to paint my house. That's going to be a couple $1,000s. Do I need a home improvement contract for paint?
That becomes sort of a personal choice, because
Okay.
if it's only going to be a couple thousand, you don't want to spend the money. It's probably going to be more than that to get a full package of a proper home improvement contract. So at least the minimum you can do for a small thing is have go on the contractor's licensing board and CSLB,
Okay.
and put in the name of the contractor to make sure that they are licensed, their license is active, and that they have the bond.
At least that. Okay.
You know, if they have an active license, they have the bond in place. So
Okay.
that's a minimum. And ask them to give you a copy of their certificate of insurance, because they're painting, but they could damage a lot more than they're doing there. Something happens, some kind of an accident, and I don't know, they fall on an extreme,
Right.
you know, extremely expensive piece of your household furniture or anything like that.
Or my neighbor has
Or-
nice cars. Like if they got paint on the neighbor's car or something like that.
Exactly. And then now we're talking, you know, the car is, you can't paint a, you know, high model car with a couple $1,000s.
No,
I don't know. Sometimes it's a total loss. So make sure they have insurance. Make sure they have their you know, they have a license.
Okay.
And that's the minimum you want to. But for higher ones, you want to make sure you have a proper written contract.
And you were saying that there's there's so much merit in this, not to scare everybody, but
Yeah.
but also this protects the homeowner, but it also protects the contractor. Can you help us understand
Correct.
what those protections look like?
Sure. You want to make sure that a contract has an attorney's fees provisions, which is something I talked about before. That means if there's a lawsuit or there's a claim, whoever wins will get attorney's fees from the other side. Does that happen often? Not very much. Does it help us settle the cases? Absolutely.
Good point.
It's like a sword, kind of like, hey, look, if you go to to the lawsuit and you go litigate this matter through trial, what happens is you're going to have to pay our attorney's fees. Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
And brings us to a point of negotiation to settle. So that's one. We put on the contractors, if we're drafting for contractors, we put clauses about delay. We put clauses for force majeure. We put clauses for material escalation, etc.
Oh, good.
If we're-
Okay. That makes
that's
sense.
on the side of the contractor. If we're on the side of the homeowner, we make sure that we spell out the exact requirements for insurance. Because, okay, under the law, they all have to have workers' comp, right? Sure. But in addition to that, what kind of commercial general liability policy do they need? And do we, ask them if it's large enough? Come on, you got to put my name as an additional insured. And I don't know if people know what that means. An additional insured is someone who's insured to the same degree as the person who has purchased insurance. What that means is that it gives you first party rights. You can directly go to the insurance company and ask them to help you with your claim as opposed to relying on the contract.
And that could be critically important.
That is extremely important because what happens is when things go wrong and the contractor doesn't have the money to pay, you want to have the insurance company come in
Sure.
and help.
And I would imagine when things go wrong, a contractor might be less reluctant to pick up the phone and call you. So
Absolutely.
you'd be left wondering what the heck's going on. At least this way you could get some information and be directly involved. I mean,
Right.
heaven forbid it happens. That would be the ideal scenario. And for those of us who aren't familiar with the law, I mean, I'm familiar with force majeure, but can you explain to the listeners what force majeure means?
Sure. Force majeure is a clause we put in a contract that basically says if something happens that's outside the control of either party, then the parties can be released from their obligations. COVID.
Exactly. Yes.
Who would have thought COVID? And we had force majeure in most of our contracts, but a lot of insurance companies, they would say, well, we're not going to cover because it doesn't specify pandemics. And so we've added pandemics, viral and bacterial
You're kidding me.
infections.
You had to specify.
Oh, we have to specify a lot, depending on where you come from. You go and you have a claim, you submit it to the insurance company. Insurance companies are going to hate me for saying this, but don't take no for an answer. They decline. Out of every 10 people they decline, only 2 of them go past the declination and get the coverage. So they will decline based on everything they can. So you want to make sure you have the exact language there. So now in our force majeure post-COVID stuff, we add the pandemics and the bacterial and viral infections. We also add acts of government. So government is the one that shut down everybody, right?
Right.
Those things become extremely important if you want to get an insurance company come in and cover the damages in a lawsuit.
And that's so smart. And of course, that benefits all parties. The homeowner would be covered
True.
and the contractor would be covered if something, again, beyond anyone's control came up. And of
Yes.
course, it was not fun for any of us. But I love that your team has at least made lemonade out of these lemons and figured out how to protect everyone better. And if I was going to be doing a large remodel on my home, which someday I will, and I hire a contractor and I really, really like this person's credentials, but I don't like their contract writing skills. Could I hire your firm to write these agreements and we would, just work with the contractor until we hammered it out and felt it was acceptable?
Yes. Here's what a lot of people are coming to us asking, what are we going to do? We're getting into a very large home improvement contract. And what we
Right.
tell them is, tell us the basics of your agreement with the contractor and 5, 6, 10 bullet points. And we will draft a contract making sure those basics are covered, but we will put the essential language per code. So there's a business and professions code that specifically speaks to home improvement contracts. And in addition to that, we will do extra provisions that would be helpful and protect you. And it's important also to understand, we just did a home improvement contract for a very large contractor, and what they do is they paint. But they paint large scale projects, and they were always doing their own old client of ours. They were always doing commercial projects, and recently they got some jobs with the Irvine Company, and they're doing their painting
Okay.
for the
The new home?
apartments.
Oh, apartments. Okay.
Yeah. And what happens is, in that kind of a situation, is that a home improvement contract? Is it not? Yes, it is a home improvement contract.
Interesting.
And so we drafted the contract for them. Of course, the contract from Irvine Company comes for them, but we have to make sure that it works with that.
Because it's the same business and professions codes and whatnot.
Yes, because it falls under the definition. There's a particular definition for home improvement contracts, and it falls under that. So a lot of interesting stuff there that you need to look at.
Now, before we take a break, and I know I'm kind of turning left extremely here,
Sure.
but something else you said in your presentation really blew my mind. And that was, like, let's say I'm having my kitchen remodeled. I did not know that I could not be demanded to put half down on the project, because a lot of contractors ask for half up front, and they can't do that.
No.
Blew my mind. So
Ta-
what can they do?
According to the Business and Professions Code, 10% or $1,000, whichever is less.
Pretty sure it's going to be 1,000.
You bet.
Wow. So can they collect more money as they progress
Yes.
through the project?
Yes.
When can they do that?
Okay, so one of the requirements of the code is that there should be a schedule of progress payments.
I
So
see.
you put it in there. Okay, we collected $1,000. We're gonna go, get ready to come, and then on the second day we're gonna collect this much. On the, after at this stage we will collect this.
It's like after
much.
we've done demolition and pulled out the old kitchen, then we get this much money.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
And then after the cabinets come, we get this much money.
Got
and, so
Wow. See, it's so much to learn, and it's worth spending a couple $1,000s up front to not be tens of $1,000s out of pocket if something
True.
goes wrong.
true.
This is
True.
pretty easy math, people, and it's your home. It's the biggest investment you're probably going to
Yes.
make. So,
Yes.
home improvement contract, it's its own special part of the law. I had no idea, and I do this for a living. Crazy. Can we take a quick break, Paul, and thank our sponsor?
I just smile. You do this for a living. You didn't know. What about us? We had no idea.
That's why you have me.
Well, you have so many people like this that you're part of this show and this network, and one of them is your sponsor, Ford and DiIulio. They're an Orange County-based boutique litigation firm with people from the big law firms, so you get that kind of experience, but on a very personalized basis. Partners who founded Ford and DiIulio do so on the basis of aligned interests. I think I'm blowing your earphones on here. Where their success is directly related to the value of what they achieve. So if you're looking to be efficient and effective, if that's something you're just not finding in your law firm, there's another firm that you might want to consider for any litigation, mediation, or trial, and that's FordDiulio.com. FordDiulio. Ford DiIulio. WENDY.com. All right, I got to ask a couple questions.
I knew it. I
got
knew it.
100 questions.
He got all
about
excited
that.
when I asked you to explain force majeure. Who's back there going, yeah.
I love that because people just accept all these things in there. I don't really know what it is. And when you see it in a contract, you think that doesn't matter. Yeah, it does at some point in time.
Well, how could any contractor be held accountable for a pandemic? I mean, that's ridiculous.
So here's what I'm trying to see if I can come up with some quick summary questions here. When do people typically employ you? Is it only on real big high-end jobs, or is it on remodeling the kitchen? Because I'm sure they're doing, I got to be honest, I'd be saying to myself, I don't need to spend a couple $1,000s. This is fine. They do this all the time. The contract's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, until it's not, until something goes wrong, until they, destroy my neighbor's car, as you were saying, because they dropped something. And I'll give you some classic examples. You're making me think. So I had two pretty good-sized trees in my yard that had been overgrown in the 20-some years we've done that. I live in one of these almost zero lot line kind of houses, so it's impacting the neighbor and all that kind of stuff. Finally, we decided it's time to take these trees down for a variety of reasons. And so...
Why am I suddenly very afraid?
Yeah. And I thought to myself, I didn't check if he had insurance. I just had a couple guys at Joe's Tree Service.
Oh, dear.
And they came out and cut these things down. And he's up there climbing around and hanging his stuff. And I thought, as he's doing, I thought, how do I know this isn't going to crash into somebody's house? Or he's not going to crash out of the tree and then sue me. There was nothing. I don't know if he had a bond or a license or anything. He's Joe's Tree Service.
Yeah.
So I suspect we hired Joe's Tree Service or Bill's Painting Company or Tom's. I'll give you another crazy one. You're really going to cringe in this one. I had somebody, my neighbor painted the outside of his house, all the stucco and everything. It was years since all faded. I said, let me use the same guy. It was just some guy and his friends that he knew, and he's real cheap. I don't even know if he was licensed or bonded, but it looked pretty good, and he did it. As they're doing it, they're hanging out the window of my upstairs.
Oh, dear
literally
Lord.
holding on to the guy so he can get part of it. Rather than using a ladder,
Oh, my God.
they're holding on. And I thought, I'm holding my breath thinking, this guy's going out.
Mahyar's holding her breath. I'm watching her.
And I'm watching these two people holding on to each other as he's leaning out a window to get some last piece of the stucco above the window here, that rather than put a ladder up. So 2 examples, real life, where I just went with cheap and quick, and somebody's neighbor did it, and fine, let's do it. No contract. I mean, yeah, we signed this whole thing.
Listeners, do not do as Paul does.
Yeah. But how many of us are just doing that? It's a couple. The tree was a couple of $1,000s. The painting was a couple of $1,000s. And when they do it, it's a couple of guys just doing this with no safety rules, probably no bond, no license, no insurance, no liability or whatever.
Please stop. My head hurts. Just please.
Am I alone? Am I the only nut person on
Put the
this?
shovel
No,
down.
Okay. Let me put your mind at ease. You're not the only one.
Okay.
I'd say about 95% of people come to us after trouble
Yeah,
starts.
right. That's what I'm thinking. I bet.
So there are very few people that think about a lawyer and a contract before they start a home remodeling project.
Particularly what you think are fairly simple things. You're going to
Yeah.
paint the outside of the house, you're going to cut
Right.
a tree down, whatever.
Right. But when you realize that if somebody falls down and they break their back, you're going to be in deep trouble. How much homeowners insurance do you have? What kind of, do you have umbrella insurance? All of those things.
I haven't looked at my insurance
so-
in 20 years.
I think it's time.
It's time. It's time. You need to do that. So unfortunately, they come to us majority of the time after trouble has started. And we've been successful in settling some of them before getting into litigation, but it's still at least 5 times more than just getting a contract together beforehand.
And when someone does come to you after the fact, as they most often do you start with, show me the contracts?
Absolutely.
The first thing is like, let's
First
just
thing,
go.
we want to see a few things. We want to see the contract. We want to see any what we call change orders. So when there's an uptick, in the price. Majority of the times you are doing your home and then all of a sudden, "Oh, you know what, how about we add this to it?" That should cause a change order to be made, and a change order would actually show the description of what is going to be done and the price, right? So we ask for contracts, we ask for change orders, we ask for any kind of invoices that have been given, evidence of payments. We also ask, if problem seems to be deep, we ask for correspondence between the contractor and the homeowner. Try to do things in writing. I mean,
Yes.
even a text is fine. But definitely, if you have a discussion on the job site with someone else, that's a handshake discussion, go back and two-liner email would preserve your rights, because not that people want to lie, but no two people remember the same thing the
Correct.
same way. It's just the
Correct.
natural way that we are. And so you want to make sure that you have some kind of a written record of what you did. So it's a two-liner. Hey, we just talked about X, Y, and Z. This is to confirm our conversation. And the last, most important sentence, please, if you do not agree with these facts, let me know.
Yes.
Okay?
Because we might be walking away from a conversation thinking we heard something we didn't.
Exactly.
Or we heard something somewhat different. Yeah, exactly. And that's how I train my team. It's like when there's a verbal conversation, like a client says, yes, we want you to stage our house, but not all of the house. Get back on the computer. So per our conversation, you'd like us to organize staging for this room, this room, this room, and just button it up. Put
Let
it
me-
right
let
in.
me ask you one more-
Document.
I was just going to say, let me ask one more question
Can I,
here.
before we
Yeah,
go forward,
go.
just one more thing. Documenting the progress of the job, whether you're a contractor or a homeowner or a project owner. We all have these little devices in our purses and pockets that can take photos. Take
Right.
photos. If you see damage, take photos. Whatever you do, good work, take photos.
Good point.
Having those and the right documentation helps you move forward. And I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
That's
with
okay.
your-
No, I'm just thinking out loud as you talk about documentation, putting it down in writing. I do that all the time.
Okay.
And most of these little contractors look at me like, you don't have to do. We talked about that. And I just always think, well, what if something? I want to make sure we're clear so there's no disagreement later. And if it happened to turn into litigation, then you do have some documents you can put forward. Because most people, it's just he said, she said. But my question was this. Do you think they pay more attention to you when you start putting it down on paper? Because I've seen that.
Yes.
You and I are talking about, yeah, we talked about it. When I start sending you text or emails and saying, per our conversation, this is it. This is my understanding. They respond differently. Ooh, this could be
Absolutely.
litigation.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So
We
make
take it
sure.
seriously.
And just keeping those and all your records in one place seems very elementary, but organization is key nowadays. Everybody's files are on computers. Just open a folder, put some directories in there, one for the contract, change orders, correspondence, blah, blah, blah. Keep them together, and if there's trouble brewing, one other thing that everybody, you were talking about communication earlier. Everybody has to realize the best way to resolve problems is through communication.
Absolutely. And clear communication cures a lot of ills. Well, I want to keep you on schedule, so let's wrap this up with my favorite part, with all things Mahyar. So we know about your business, but now about the human being. This is my own version of the Vanity Fair Proust questionnaire. So
Okay.
tell us about where you live and why you love living there.
I live in Laguna Niguel. I've been there for a very long time. I like the proximity to the ocean, but also, the hills and valleys. It makes it interesting.
It's
I
a
like Southern
beautiful area.
California. I've been in Southern California most of my life, and anywhere else I travel in the world, it's always nice to come back home.
Right? We live in paradise.
We do.
If you have one, what would you say is your most treasured possession?
My most treasured possession.
Her time here with you.
I have absolutely. I do. In addition to that, I have a painting from my mother that she did before she got married. It's a rose that she did. It's watercolor and silk, and it's beautiful.
How
And I love
romantic and wonderful.
it. Yeah.
Ugh,
Don't make me cry because she
Okay.
passed away a few years ago. So
our parents are everything. So you've got so much more that you're going to do, but as of this moment, what do you think is your greatest achievement to date?
helping people in the last, I started my own practice 12 years ago. This is our month of anniversary.
Oh,
October is our 12th year anniversary.
congratulations.
Thank you. And I think the greatest achievement is having people come back and say, hey, we don't know what we would have done if you weren't there. Thank you so much. And it happens when I was with large firms in more corporate environments. You deal mostly with corporate clients, which are great as well. But you don't hear that every day. But now a lot of our very large companies are still mom and pop. I mean, it could be $200 million company, but it's a third generation. And so you have that direct connection with your clients.
Yeah.
They become good friends. And that's the greatest achievement, to be able to build a team that can actually help people.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
And so for all those people who want to reach you, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, occonstructionattorneys.com, that's our website.
Perfect.
And then they can call our office, 436-2785 and 949 area code. And on the website, they can go and, put in an email or a request, and we get those.
Perfect. They can contact you there. Thank you so much for coming back. It's always so good to see you.
My pleasure, Wendy. It's a fantastic forum, and I really enjoy our talk. So thank you.
Me too. All right. For all of you listening, thank you for being with us once again. And if you want to listen to all the other podcasts, just find us wherever you most like to listen to podcasts. We're everywhere.